Hello, my name is Julie Eberhardt, and I'm going to be reporting from Fairbanks. My site location is located on the east side of the Goldstream Valley. The dates for the observations were from Monday, the 10th of September, through Saturday, the 15th of September, and that's 2012. The approximate time that I took the observations was about 12:15 every day, and my National Weather Service location is the Fairbanks International Airport. Starting on Tuesday, the 11th, my reported temperature was 48.3 degrees Fahrenheit. It was a clear sky with zero precipitation. I rated the day at a Beaufort scale rating of 1, which had northeast winds traveling at about 3 miles per hour. My max temperature was 48.9 degrees Fahrenheit, with a minimum of 39.4. The National Weather Service had rated the day at 49.9 degrees Fahrenheit, which was just about a degree or so off from my maximum temperature, so I felt confident with those numbers and felt like I wasn't too far off there. And for that day, I didn't have any interesting phenomena to report. Wednesday the 12th happened to be my warmest day with a temperature of 49.1 degrees Fahrenheit. There's very minimal cloud cover that day with zero precipitation. I rated the day again at a Beaufort scale of a level 1, and that was with northwest winds at 3 miles per hour. My maximum temperature recorded was 50.4 degrees Fahrenheit with a minimum of 40.3. The National Weather Service for that day was at 51.2, and that's reporting from the Fairbanks International Airport. And so again, I felt confident with my numbers in that I was only off by about 0.8 of a degree. And I feel comfortable with those numbers as well, since I do know that I live up in the hills on top of the ridge, so I'm naturally going to be inclined to have warmer temperatures than the rest of the town that's lower in the valley. On Thursday the 13th, I was reporting at a temperature of 41.1 degrees Fahrenheit. That day the clouds were pretty heavy. They were quite dense. However, there was zero rain at the time of my observation. I rated the day at a Beaufort scale of a level 1, and there were southeast winds ranging between 0 to 3 miles per hour. My maximum temperature for the day was 46.1 degrees Fahrenheit, and with the minimum recording at 32.4 degrees Fahrenheit. The National Weather Service had the reporting of 44.7 degrees Fahrenheit. And this also happened to be my coolest day, which could be an explanation for why in the morning there was frost on my windshield. However, it really wasn't to the point where I had to scrape it off or anything. It came off pretty quick with the defrost, so that was sort of nice and sort of a welcoming transition into the later parts of fall here in Fairbanks. On Friday the 14th, I had temperatures reporting at 43.2 degrees Fahrenheit with some heavy clouds, which indicated warmer temperatures and lower settings for the clouds. There was some light precipitation later on in the evening. I reported the Beaufort scale at a level 1 from 0 to 3 miles per hour for the wind, since I didn't feel any whatsoever. My maximum temperature for the day was 45.6 degrees Fahrenheit with a minimum of 34.8 degrees Fahrenheit. The National Weather Service had a reporting of 47.3 degrees Fahrenheit. And I want to say that I saw a faint rainbow later in the evening. However, I feel like it might have just been my imagination, since I think rainbows are quite nice. On Saturday the 15th, I recorded a temperature of 41.8 degrees Fahrenheit. There was some slight rain and some heavy cloud cover that day. My Beaufort scale earlier in the day at the time of my observation was rated at a level 1 with zero wind. It was my coolest day one of my coolest days for the week, with a maximum temperature of 43.1 degrees Fahrenheit with a minimum temperature of 34.3 degrees Fahrenheit, and the National Weather Service reporting at 50.1 degrees Fahrenheit. However, as the day progressed and the evening came forward, the wind started to definitely pick up, so I re-rated the scale, the Beaufort scale, at closer to a level 8, and that rated for some gale force winds that were running between 34 to 40 knots. It was to the point where not only were twigs breaking off of trees, but trees were actually falling and causing a lot of issues for a lot of people. As I was reading, my lights were flickering as the electricity was coming on and off. And my boyfriend, who's a lineman, ended up leaving at about 6 o'clock in the evening to go on emergency calls through GVA. and continued to work for the next 27 hours restoring power around the local areas, including through Nenana. So that kind of alone tells me that things are pretty serious, and it was pretty windy pretty much across the area, so maybe we got a small dose of what Anchorage was experiencing last weekend, or I guess at this point it'd be 2 weekends ago. Looking just through my temperatures and then here on my graph of the air temperature throughout the week, I didn't see any major warming or cooling patterns throughout the week. It stayed relatively consistent with the exception of Wednesday the 12th, where it did drop a lot, or I'm sorry, it did rise a lot warmer, and then on Thursday it dropped a little bit, so you can kind of see that fall through the air pressure, or rather through the air temperature. And looking at the pressure system as it's moving throughout the week of my recordings, on Tuesday the 11th, I recorded at my location 1007.4 millibars, while the National Weather Service was calling for 1008 millibars. On Wednesday the 12th, I was reading at 1005.9 millibars, while the National Weather Service was reporting at 1007.1 millibars. On Thursday the 13th, my reading was at 1011.3 millibars, and the National Weather Service was at 1002.8 millibars. On Friday the 14th, I was at 1009.1 millibars, while the National Weather Service was at 1010.4 millibars. And on Saturday the 15th, I was at 1008.4 millibars, while the National Weather Service was at 1010.6 millibars. Looking just off the data that I have compared with the National Weather Service, I don't see any drastic changes or any major biases, except on Thursday the 13th, where my reading again was at 1011.3 millibars, and the Weather Service was at 1002.8 millibars. That's a pretty significant difference there, and I'm slightly concerned possibly about my reading, so maybe I'll have to check out my equipment and just make sure I was reading it well for that day, because otherwise the other days I was pretty spot on with the Weather Service, so I felt pretty comfortable with those readings. And also, this lower pressure system that was coming in through the weekend did make sense because of that Saturday, or the Friday evening and Saturday rain that occurred. Makes sense then that that system did definitely bring in some stormy weather and brought some rain into our area for that time period, and then seemed to clear up shortly thereafter. So looking at the actual weather map for Monday, September 10th, I'm going to take a look here at the systems that were going on for that day. I'm located over here in Fairbanks, which is just about the heart of Alaska. We're south of Yukon River, which is this larger river flowing here. Taking a look at that day, there were some winds, or I'm sorry, some low pressure system coming up from the Gulf down here and over through the Bering Sea. There was a trough here right in the eastern part of Alaska, which definitely protected us from those low pressure systems. There was some minor rain and some minor snow over here to the east of Fairbanks. And again, this is one of my more moderate temperature days at about 44.1 degrees Fahrenheit, which was reflected that day at my house. Through the illusions here, you can kind of see that there's a clear break in the sky with a low pressure system that's traveling northwest with an oculated front, and the pressure system here is about 994 millibars. On Tuesday, September 11th, the map here looks rather interesting. There are definitely some lower pressure fronts moving a little bit north from the southwest here. Here in Fairbanks, there's a trough sitting right above it, which could again explain that clearer day that we had. There's also some minimal cloud cover here. However, there were some slight showers just south of Fairbanks, which, as I recall, Delta did have a little bit of rain that day. Again, my sweetie, I think, was working that day down there, so that was word of mouth from him. There was some diminished cloud cover, and the temperature reading that I had for that day was around 46.3 degrees Fahrenheit, and the moderate temperature for that day was about 49 degrees Fahrenheit. On Wednesday the 12th, again, this was my warmest day, recording at about 49.1 degrees Fahrenheit. There is an increase in pressure, and that was attributed to this low pressure colder system that was still rising from south central. And again, we had this trough here blocking us here in Fairbanks with just minimal cloud cover. Near that day, there was some light rain just around Fairbanks, although in the map it shows a bit more further south, which is towards the Anchorage area. But again, that day was pretty warm, and it kind of was reflected there in the temperatures of that low system, reporting at about 1,006 millibars. Thursday the 13th ended up being one of my coldest days at 41.1 degrees Fahrenheit. There was a low system, or low pressure system located here that started to blow from the east over here in Siberia and the Russian area of the Bering Sea. There was a lower pressure system at 1,008 millibars here in south central Alaska, as well as some light showers. Fairbanks area here did have some pretty heavy, some dense clouds, and that affected some cooler temperatures. And here in Fairbanks it was reporting at about 1,002 millibars. On Friday the 14th, there is a high system settling closer here into the northern region, as you can see. There's definitely some dense fog and some snow up northern, or in the northern part here along the Brooks Range. Fairbanks was also experiencing some rain right about here, as well as some fog and some heavy clouds, which led to some cooler temperatures. The southern or southwestern part of the state here has an occluded front that was moving northeast, and there was some light snow just south of Fairbanks here as well. The temperature that I had for that day here in Fairbanks was at about 45.6 degrees, and I'm not exactly sure how that reading paralleled with the National Weather Service. This was also the day that I had some tricky times with my barometer, so I might have been off a little bit that day as well. But otherwise, there's definitely some rain present throughout the entire interior region here. On Saturday the 15th, there were some diminished clouds, but there was definitely some heavy cover. The green indicates some heavy rain throughout the area, and there was a low front just south of, or just southwest of Fairbanks here in this region with an occluded front and some scattered rain showers present throughout the area around Fairbanks. The time that this map was taken, I believe that this was right about the time that we had our heavy storm, and again, this was that day where the winds were at heavy knots between about 34 to 40 on the Beaufort scale, and again, just bringing in that heavy rain that we experienced that evening. And just because I said I would, I wanted to just make a shout out to my sweetie, who was one of the linemen out there saving people throughout the week and helping them to restore their power down in Anchorage and again through Nenana this past weekend, as well as the Fairbanks area. And then last but not least, just kind of comparing these images all together at the same time, the weather map, or the TV weather map, the infrared vision, the visible vision, and the water vapor map. They all lined up pretty concisely and matched really well with my readings for that particular day, which was September 10th. I was really happy being able to see these images reflecting on my observations and with the temperature readings as well as the readings of my barometer for that day. I didn't really witness throughout this week any major phenomena that I haven't already mentioned. I didn't see any unusual clouds, and the weather didn't seem to be extreme or unusual, except again on Saturday the 15th, where we had just that really nasty storm later in the evening of that day. I didn't have any major challenges making the observations. Usually the most challenging part for me is to do the screencast itself and keep it within a reasonable time limit. And at that mention, I believe that I'm all set, and thank you so much for listening, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their week.